the abuser tends to be a highly manipulative individual. And some of them are better at it than others. I'm dealing with a guy right now, in case where I'm trying to advocate for a couple women, whose marriages only seem to last about 4 to 6 months, so he's probably not one of the real good manipulators. And the bad abuser is a blessing. But unfortunately, most abusers are pretty good abusers. They're really good at what they're doing. And so they know how to make things appear the opposite of what they are. And they're almost never out of control. Unless they've got really serious mental health problems, they're not out of control. They make remarkably calculated sets of decisions. And you'll see some examples of that as we look at some of these different pieces about how this manipulativeness, the calculatedness, again, that's the opposite of the image we tend to have of this abuser who's just this tormented, out of control individual. The reality is he's someone who tends to have a lot of method to the madness. He tends to know a lot about what he's on about. And he's got plans. He's doing some thinking about how to make this all work. And then another point that I want to draw your attention to before we look at these pieces is the way that there we go. Although I'm really just playing with that. But no, this will be better. This will be better, thank you. Is how the abuser defines love. And part of why I want to underline this point is because I think this is one of the areas where abusers have the most success in creating confusion among other people that are around them. And when he says, I really love you, that's all about him. It's not about her. So it doesn't mean the same thing that love means to a non-abusive person. I really love you means I am so attracted and attached to what I believe you could do for me. And once they're together, it comes to mean I'm so attracted and attached to what you must do for me, what it is your obligation to do for me. Now, he's not lying when he says he really loves her. That's really what he feels. The problem is the feeling that he defines as love. The feeling that he has through his teen years and then into his adulthood come to identify as love is not the same feeling that I would call love. And I hope it's not the same feeling that you would call love. This is a feeling about a very intense desire to own and control somebody. That's not very related to seeing this person as a human being. So it's much more akin to how you would become attached to a thing. And so you'll hear, for example, and some of the stuff may be hard to hear, and the acoustics in this room are a little iffy, so pieces may go by as we listen to this stuff, but I think you'll catch a lot of it. Well, you'll hear a guy who's been beating the daylights out of a woman in a music video, talking about how intensely he loves her. And I think it's important for us to not get confused there. Say, no, he does not love her. That's not how you treat somebody that you love. But we get really drawn into this notion of the tortured relationship, or of two people who are both hooked on the drama, or two people who bring out the worst in each other. That is a tremendous misreading of dynamics of an abuser and a traumatized victim who's actually showing the entirely predictable effects of trauma. What trauma will do to almost anyone. And the failure to understand trauma, I think, is a really significant source of victim blame. Because people will look at a woman operating the way traumatized people are known to function. Not just traumatized women, but traumatized men and women are known to function. And will say, oh my God, what's the matter with her? She must just want to be abused. Or she must think this is love. Or, well, she's apologizing to him, so what does she expect? She's giving in to him. With no understanding of how a tortured prisoner operates in exactly the same way, how an abused child operates in exactly the same way, how combat veterans show so many of the same symptoms. It's about trauma. It's not about something that's wrong with her. It's not about codependency. It can be sometimes, to some extent, about some of the ways that she is a target also of very, very heavy societal indoctrination. But we're all taking part in that. That's not an excuse to look down on her. So, okay, I'm sort of famous for preambles that use up all the time I've got. So, I'm going to start moving now into looking at some of the media selections, and I really want to thank Sarah Cortes very much, who really did almost all the work and put the media show together. And the really powerful illustrations of how the media can either be really undermining our efforts to make workplaces safe places, or how they could be contributing to making workplaces safe places. Because of the messages that everyone is taking in about relationship violence that they're then bringing in with them to where they work. So, okay. All right, no, this is what I've already talked about. Oh, the only thing from this list that I didn't already talk about yet is that it's a very widespread part of the pattern that abusers involve the children in various ways as part of how they hurt and control and intimidate the woman. And in our time, dating back now, well, it got heavy by about 10 years ago, but it starts even farther back than that. It goes back about 20 years. Abusers have really started heavily playing the custody card, and they're doing very, very well at it. And there is, I don't believe there's anything more cruel that you can do to a caring mother than take her children away from her. What is a greater atrocity, Nazi level atrocity, than to take a loving mother's children away from her? I think it's horrible to take a loving father's children away from him, but I'm a divorced father. I will continue to say, and I will never, this is another thing that you're not allowed to say, but I refuse to stop saying it. There are certain things that are special about children's relationship with their moms. My children adore me. I'm really important to them. I'm not a big fan of their mother. They have a really, really crucial bond to their mother that is not exactly the same as their bond to me. And it's going to be different until men start doing 50% of the pregnancies, 50% of the delivery, 50% of the breastfeeding. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to happen. I remember this old science fiction story, but I don't think it's so the custody card has become a really, really critical venue for intense viciousness and cruelty on the part of abusers. Oh, I can stand aside. All right, so there's so much to say about why media images are an important influence. And I'm not going to remotely cover all the different issues. There was a study done years ago, probably 15 years ago now, that looked at men's beliefs about rape, and then looked at what their own histories were, based on their own self-report, actually, of having committed rape. And it found that men who accepted the key myths about rape were much more likely to have had histories of actually perpetrating rape. What people believe matters. In all my years working with abusers, they come in with their excuses and their justifications. We see the reasons that they're giving, and they point to specific things. Well, that's what my father did, or that's what it says in whatever my religion's key texts, religious scriptures are. This is the way it's always been. That's just the way it's done. At Emerge, where I was the battle program where I was a counselor for years, we would notice certain specific acts of violence that would come through in waves. Like, I can still remember the year when all our clients seemed to be throwing the toaster at the woman. And it's like, why do we keep getting these stories over? And then eventually, I remember that one specifically. We tracked it down to the movie that it came from. And we started realizing, because we started to feel like the batterers were graduates of some kind of like batterer academy. Because of the ways the behaviors would come in waves. But we started to realize this is the media. When it gets a specific behavior that's coming in a wave, that's from media. And then the homicides would also come in waves. In Massachusetts in general, I find that in all states. That's got nothing to do with what goes on. I didn't observe that in the batterer program. We were fortunate enough to have, I think, in all my years, only one client commit a homicide. But abusers get energy from what other abusers do. And the abuser who's teetering right on the edge, I've read a diary that was found of an abuser who did kill his wife, and the victim's relatives got their hands on his diary. And you watch him teetering on this decision of whether to kill her or not. It's hard. And you know, well, this next thing might be what puts him over the edge. So abusers get inspired by what other abusers do, and they get inspired by media images. The behaviors get just considered not that bad. So that's another effect that the media images have, particularly when you see them over and over and over again. You just get tons of them. So. I'm going to make just a couple comments here. One is that there are a lot of situations that coworkers or fellow students at school can tell when a woman's being abused. It becomes quite clear to them. They often don't know what to say or do, but that's where it's going to be very important whether they believe in these kinds of myths, because it's going to affect what they say. There are also times when they're completely missing it, and that's often because the abuser is so charming.
Excuse me, would you mind when you're speaking standing
I got to make sure to
the
remember
right?
to step to the.
Yeah, I'll just push this over.
Step to the
We'll
right.
switch
Thank you.
this over here.
That's
How's
that's.
that?
Yeah,
Is that better?
I'll try to make sure. That's Charlie Sheen's mugshot after one of his several arrests for, I don't know how many times he's been arrested, but I know there's been at least 4, I guess, that he's been arrested for domestic violence offenses. So. Let me just say, a lot of the stuff I've already addressed, but I just want to say, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we're making in trying to help people where there's domestic violence is the belief that if the woman would just leave him, that would magically solve the problem. And therefore, if she's not leaving him, that's the problem. The problem is that she's not leaving him. And there is so much post-separation violence of so many different kinds, and women who die overwhelmingly die as they're attempting to get out of relationships. And then the one myth here that I didn't already talk about is substance abuse. Substance abuse cannot make a batterer out of someone who's not a batterer. It's not a good thing to add to the mix. And certainly if you got someone who is a batterer and you put them on much alcohol, they're going to get even more dangerous. They're going to be even more unlikely to ever take responsibility for any of what they do. Statistically, it's well established that they're more likely to kill if they're heavy substance abusers, but that doesn't mean that that's what's causing the problem. Substance abuse makes all people's behavior patterns worse.